Holy cow. Hello everyone. It has been exactly 7 days since you've seen me last. Today is October 12th, 2013. It is Saturday. It is 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I think. And you are watching my show. So, new background. Kind of readjusted everything that's in this particular room. Phaedra's behind me. She's playing Guild Wars. Say hi, Phaedra.
Hello.
So today we're going to do a really short game. We're going to talk about Protoss SimCity, as the title says. So we're going to look at a really quick little 15-minute game that I threw together at the last minute. I had been planning to do this all week. I just had not had the time to sit down and actually record this. So we're streaming it live. We're going to wing it and see what happens and hope and pray that everything goes as smooth as I'm hoping. So hold on to your butts, stick around, and let's jump into the game. Pew. Boop. There we go. Let's try that one. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to make sure that the music is enabled and the sound. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at is a couple of different positions for Protoss. Names are unimportant. Timings are unimportant. Build orders are unimportant in this particular situation. We're going to look at generally how Protoss will look at different stages of the game. So to get this laid out and to kind of give you perspective, this is the very start of a game. As you can see by the game clock, it's 4 minutes and 14 seconds in. We're looking at a Protoss base. Now, as you can see over here, we're viewing everybody, but there's no opponent. I love doing videos like this because I can just focus on what I'm doing when I record this, and we'll have a good time. So, at the front of the base, you're going to see the ramp that we talked about on the episode a few weeks back, where we talk about wall-offs, good positioning, pylons not in the ramp, or not in the wall-off, so this is a good solid wall-off from Protoss. Zealot here holding position, just making sure that nothing gets by. No Ling run bys, no Marines sneaking their way in here. We have this pylon here that when it's complete will give us vision down to about here. So we'll go ahead and get this started up and let that pylon finish. So when the pylon finishes, it gives us good vision so that we can see any sort of sneaky shenanigan drops that come in from Terran if we're going we're trying to build up any sort of tech. We're trying to tech really fast. So pylon for vision here. Thing to note about the pylons is that you want it close to the rocks, but you want to be able to let stalkers run in and out of here. So making sure that it's back far enough that things can get in front of it, yet forward enough that you can actually see most of what you need to is very, very imperative. Now there's this big gap here of vision, but this early in the game, not a big deal. And as you see this go along, you'll notice that that'll lag out everything. You'll notice that it'll get better and better. So pylon goes down here. That reveals this section. Zealots start chopping down the rocks, and this is pretty standard. You get the second down, you start chopping down the rocks, especially if you know that you're going for an early third. This is on Echelon wastes, by the way. So Zealots come down, chopping down some stuff. Not important. Robo facility. So I'm going to pause here. Now, the positioning of this robotics facility, the goal was to put it in a position such that if Terran scans, they won't catch it. Now I placed it a little bit too close. You need to place it like here. But this building here gives us vision up here for anything that might be coming in. It's also not too close to the wall, so you can sneak stalkers back there and defend off any early harass. But the goal for your big tech building, the building that gives your hand away, is going to be that position where it cannot be easily scouted. So in this particular instance, I was building Immortals. I was going for some sort of Gateway Immortal type build, was what I was trying to recreate. So positioning with this particular build is super, super, super important. This robo facility needs to be in a position such that if a scan goes down on the mineral line or right over the nexus, because as far as the opponent can see, who's not existed, but as far as the opponent can see, he knows that your base is going to be here. There's a chance that there might be a tech building or two back here. No chance that you're not really going to have any tech here. So what they're going to want to do is they're going to want to scan here, here, or here. Some Terran players will not scan at all. They'll just run something up the ramp to see what you've got posted here. Trying to take a peek at what your current army composition is, because that might have a telltale sign. So if you already have an immortal built at this point, and he's just parked here and he takes a shot, they'll hear that on their screen. I have to take a sip of water. It's getting thirsty. So we're going to press this along. Getting some probies transitioned. And now we see the big 4 gate that usually coincides with this kind of a build. So the timing on this, just for kind of a linear purpose, is when you have warp gate, that's when you plunk down the robotics facility. Usually always pump out an observer first, just so that you can get some really good scout information off. Once the observer's done, you start your immortal. Now, immortals take 55 seconds to build. Buildings take 65 seconds to build. So the timing on this is soon after you start the immortal. Yeah. Must view all the health bars. There we go. The timing is this. As soon as you start the immortal, you want to start building these extra 3 gateways. That will be a discussion for another video when I finish working out the kinks in my game, so I can actually show you this properly. For a immortal first 4 gate, very heavy pressure style of gameplay, where you build a big army really fast of low-tech units that don't have a whole lot of upgrades, and then you just expand, and then you kind of overwhelm your opponent. It's kind of a Zergy type play, but it works. And it's really powerful. So, Immortal starts, gateways go down, that should round out your 4 gate, and then at this point it's just build as normal. So you've already got 2 bases up. You can start the 3rd. You don't really need to start producing from it. Usually you'll just transfer your workers from this base over to this base as it starts to fill up. Sometimes if you really need the economy, you'll go ahead and populate that. But you're going to want all of your supply tied up with army value. So getting into the actual positioning of the buildings for how we talked about this last week with Terran. The Protoss, whenever they go for a ground army, have a distinct advantage over all the other races. So, Zerg, you have to watch where you place your buildings so that you don't have anything that blocks off your attack paths. Terran, you don't want to have buildings put too closely together because you have to both keep track of add-ons that might go down later, and you have to keep track of what size the unit that you're producing is going to be so that you can actually push them through the buildings. All of your production facilities will be lined up very similarly to how they're lined up in this particular game, but instead of having them crammed together like Protoss can, you have to split them apart. So Terran takes up a lot of room. So for this amount of production, Terran's going to be taking up this entire top portion just with production facilities. So the advantage Protoss always has is Warp Gate. So Warp Gate allows you to warp in units at any place where you have pylon power on the map. A little bit of testing has shown that the game designers developed it so that even if you're playing in twos, I can't warp in on my allies' power grid. I have to use my own. So pylon placement out across the map, we'll cover that with scouting. I talked a little bit about it when I did the Surg scouting one a couple weeks back. It was like my first video. So in this particular situation, if you're going for, Immortal with a ground army, with like Templar, Archons, that kind of thing, the only building that needs a clear line for you to produce units is your robotics facility. Your gateways, warp in around the map so you can warp in units wherever you have power. Not a big deal. All you need to do is make sure that you have a pylon that has power that you can then move out from. Your High Templar, Dark Templar, Archons all come from your gateway. So they fall into the same thing. At that point, you need to concentrate on where do I build this building so that it can't get picked off, if that's going to be one of your core units that you can't live without. Going back into the game. So we see Templar Archives, Twilight Council getting charge, getting Storm eventually when this is done. Boom. Storm. Templar. I turned them immediately into Archons just to prove a point. So if we pause here and we look at this setup. So we have Zealots, which are approximately 1 square. When you go to build a building, when you build a building, that grid that pops up. Buildings like a warp gate, a gateway, a cybernetics core, robotics facility, Twilight Council, Templar Archives, your forge. Those buildings are all 3x3 squares. Nexuses, proper noun, nexuses, yeah, are 4x4, and this is common for all races. So all of your core buildings, the command center, hatchery, and nexus are all 4x4 on the little grid, 4x4. All of the production facilities after that, gateways, factories, barracks, evolution chambers, upgrade buildings, those are all 3x3. Your supply buildings are 2x2, and then your defensive structures are all 2x2. So pylons, supply depots, names, they're eluding me. The Dark Shrine is an exception. Dark Shrine is a 2x2 building. Spire is a 2x2 building. So those are the little squares that they take up on the map, on the grid. Those are grid squares, right? When you look at units, we're just going to fly through this real quick. Probes fill up a 1x1 square. Zealots fill up a 1x1 square. Immortals fill up 1.5 squares. For purposes of navigation, they can squeeze through a 1 square opening. Did you catch that? We'll go back and I'll slow it down. Just to prove that I'm not lying, Immortals will fit through a 1 square opening because they're only a 1.5 squares wide. Like a champ. Okay? Archons are 2 squares wide, and I believe they will get stuck. I don't believe an Archon will fit through here. I might be mistaken. But that's not a big deal anyways, because you're not going to be warping, you're not going to be building Archons in here, and you're not really going to be using them to deflect anything. You're going to be using Stalkers. At this point, this is where usually Protoss transitions to late game, builds all the rest of their 9 or 10 or 15 warp gates to replenish their zealots that are just dying by the hundreds. Usually you'll see another robotics facility go down. You won't see a robotics support bay in this particular situation. You'll just see forges cranking out upgrades. You'll see these guys getting upgrades and research. So let's talk about these pylons. Let's talk about pylon placement. I can hide health bars now. Uh-oh, I left the game. So this is going to be perfect. So let's talk about pylon placement. So pylons, as everybody knows, when you plant a pylon, it powers a certain grid area for your production buildings to work. There is a thing in StarCraft called the Artosis pylon. People make fun of Artosis because during one of his championship games, I believe he left a particular... It was a certain game that Day9 was casting. Somebody was casting it. It was live. He left one of his key support structures, something that he absolutely needed 100% in order to win that game, with only one pylon powering it, and put the pylon out in front of the building. The pylon was picked off, the building was unpowered, and he ended up losing the game. Thus the term Artosis pylon. So an Artosis pylon is any time you have a series of buildings being powered by only one pylon, and that one pylon is in a bad position. So, as we can see here, I don't have any Artosis pylons. I had to make sure that I didn't have everything's doubled up. You always want to put at least 2 pylons to power everything, merely because of the fact that, let's say, a Zerg player gets Broodlords. You pick off, if there's only one pylon powering all of this, you pick off that pylon, all of this gets powered off. All of your production facilities are dead in the water, and you can't get back in here to rebuild it. You have to then build a pylon like here, another pylon here, another pylon up here in this corner, and then another pylon in this corner up there. So it puts you in a really bad bind. So your production facilities double up, triple up, quadruple up on the number of pylons that you have powering them. Not a big deal. Pylons give you supply, and they also secure your facilities, the power to your facilities, so that you don't lose them. Because a powered down facility is basically like a destroyed facility. It is 100% useless to you until you can get a pylon back in place. So, that being said, pylon placement around the map, we're going to talk about that in a different video. I want today to be a real quick one. I don't have a whole heck of a lot of time. But some key things to remember is Protoss. Double up your pylons. Double up your pylons. Double up your pylons on key buildings that you need. Plant pylons across the map. That's how you become a mobile Protoss force. And you have the easiest job when it comes to building buildings. Placing your buildings is very, very easy. Make sure that if they're close to a cliff, that stalkers can get behind them. You can use pylons to spot for drops or anything incoming like that. If you have gateways that are not warp gates, you need to have one clear path, just like with Terran. But most of the time, your gateways are not going to stay gateways for long, so it's not that big of a deal. Ram all of your ground buildings together. It's not heartbreaking. It's not game breaking. The robotics bay is about the only building that you need to worry about, or the robotics facility is about the only building that you need to worry about placing with clear lines of reinforcement. So if you just run down the list of units that you can build, Zealots, Stalkers, Sentries, Darkenhide, Templar all come out of the gateway. Those can all be warped in. And warping is such a cheap upgrade that if you don't get it at some point during the game, you're kind of a noob. Phoenixes, Void Rays, Carriers, Oracles, Mothership cores and Motherships, all flying units. Their building placement doesn't matter. Observers, also a flying unit. Warp Prisms, also a flying unit. But Immortals are the ones that get stuck. Colossus can usually just walk over stuff. So Colossus aren't that big of a deal, but Immortals. If you have Immortals in your army, have to have clear lines of reinforcement from your robotics facility. Everything else doesn't matter. You get warp gates, you're good. You get warp gates, you're good. You go air, you're good. You can build wherever you want as Protoss as long as you reinforce, double up your pylons, double up your pylons, double up your pylons. They're cheap, they're quick, they give you supply. Why wouldn't you double up on them? I mean, Terran doubles up on supply depots if they know a lot of their supply depots are going to get destroyed throughout the period of a game. They'll just double up on them. It's not a big deal. It's cheap minerals. It's fine. Zerg, Overlords, turned into Overseers. Overlords are used for scouting. They go away all the time. They're a supply unit. They're so key. They're how you build an army. But they get thrown away all the time. No big deal. You just build more. They all cost 100 minerals. They all take the same amount of time to build. I just don't remember how long they take to build off the top of my head. So it's a good investment. Double up your pylons, double up your pylons, double up your pylons. Hoping you remember that. When it comes to your forges, I do want to talk about this real quick, and then I'm going to end the show today. Wow, 20-minute show. Holy crap. Forges. So forges for Protoss are like engineering bays for Terran, are like Evo chambers for Zerg. Forges can be used to effectively wall off this. So what you do is it's like a pylon back here, forge, gateway, cyber core. If you're going for this really fast nexus, it's basically you build the pylon, you build the forge, you fast expand, and then it's another forge, a gateway, and a cybernetics bay, cybernetics core. And that's your wall off. Period. Dot. End of story. It's pretty cool. Same rules apply. We talked about Evo chambers with Zerg like last week. Same rules apply for forges with Protoss. You want to kind of reinforce them if you can. I would not go for a pure forge wall off unless you are confident that you can either hold it or you know that the forge is kind of a throwaway unit for that game, or a throwaway building for that particular match. So for instance, you build the forge, go fast expand, cannons, all the cannons that you want go down, forge goes away, whatever, you have sky toss and you just kind of roll face at that point. Not a big deal. So to recap the entire episode, I'm going to go into some announcements. The robotics facility is the only building that has to have a clear line of sight for reinforcements. Clear reinforcement path. Unless you're not building immortals. If you don't plan on building immortals at all that game, you can plant your buildings wherever the heck you want. A couple things that we ask you to keep in mind. You want to make sure that any buildings that you build near a cliff, there's enough room for stalkers to get behind them so that you can reinforce or destroy any drops that might show up. And double up your pylons. So with that being said, a couple of things. Tomorrow's episode is going to be talking about mechanics of building placement for Zerg. I had not done that portion of the video for this week, or for last week. In case some of you are wondering, no, my nose is not crooked. I've looked at this like 4 or 5 times, and I look at it in different lighting conditions, and it's a different, like, it points in a different direction. So I'm thinking it's just so huge. I mean, look at it. Look at how big this nose is. I'm thinking my nose is just so huge that when a shadow's cast on it at all, that it just looks like it's crooked. So my nose is not crooked. Don't feel sorry for me. My nose is not crooked. I did not break it or shatter it or do anything stupid like that. That being said, so tomorrow's episode is going to be the same time, same place. We're going to be talking about building placement for Zerg. It's going to be a little bit longer of a video. There's a lot of little nuances with Zerg that a lot of people don't realize. Next week, I am going to talk about early game harassment. We're going to look at builds. Next Saturday's episode is going to be really long. We're going to be looking at some builds from the 3 different races, Zerg, Terran, and Protoss. We're going to be looking at early harass, 4-gate rush, Lane Baneling, Blowdown. We're actually going to look at the build that I use all the time on ladder. And yeah, it's gonna be a good time. So tune in tomorrow. We're gonna talk about Zerg building placement, and then tune in next Saturday, 4 o'clock Eastern, if you are on the East Coast or have the Eastern time thing going on. And we'll talk about early rushes, and we'll actually start getting into the nitty gritty. So far, my episodes have been very general, very generic, but next week we're gonna start plowing into really some in-depth stuff. So, another announcement, I have now live a website. Yay! Let's see if I can put this up here without breaking it. I didn't plan to do this, but I have a website. So if you point your browser of choice at threxor.net, you will see add screen region. As you can tell, I was unprepared. So we're gonna add that. We're gonna stretch this out so you can't see my horrible background. I'm gonna fix. Come on. There we go. So, there we have hidden behind my head, or hiding my face. This is Threxor.net. It's a work in progress still. There's a link to my live stream right there. There's a news, the schedule. So I'm going to start placing all this information here, and then changing it as necessary. I'll be putting a blog up eventually, whenever whenever the spirit takes me. And there's also a contact us section. So these fields, when you hit submit, will send an email to me. I will get it. I will read it. I check it often, and it's always empty, probably because nobody knows it's there. There's also links to YouTube, Twitter, and another Mail-To link. So if there's something that you want to see, if there's a topic you would like me to cover, if there's something that you'd like to see me play on my live stream at all, ever, go ahead and send an email to threxor@threxor.net, or you can go to the website, click on the contact us, and send it to me in a message. Either way works. They both go to the same place. And I'll see what I can do. I'll see if I can put it up on the show. Also, if you would like for me to cast any tournaments that you might be running or throwing out there, go ahead and just give me a shout at threxor@threxor.net. As always, keep an eye on me here, twitch.tv/Threxor, youtube.com/Threxor, Twitter at Threxor, and of course, Threxor.net. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful, what is it, Columbus Day? Mm-hmm. Yeah, have a wonderful Columbus Day on Monday, and I will see you guys next time.